Should they stay or should they go? We examine the Patriots coaching staff here on Pats Cast.
Pats Cast in the spotlight. Time to weigh the call. Jerod Mayo's future. Will he rise or fall?
Welcome to Pats Cast. I'm Brad Whitaker. So much debate, so much conversation has already begun about the Patriots coaching staff heading into next season. And these final few games for the Patriots are going to be crucial for all of these three leadership roles with the coaching staff, starting with head coach Jerod Mayo, offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt, defensive coordinator DeMarcus Covington. All of these guys could potentially be on the hot seat depending how these last four games go. Now, in all likelihood, with the Patriots having to face the Arizona Cardinals on the road, 2 games against the Buffalo Bills, and of course the Chargers, which is going to be no easy game at home, there's a real chance they finish the season with just a 3-14 record, which could mean all of these guys are going to be fired, even Jerod Mayo. So why don't we break it down real quick, and I will give the argument of whether each of these guys should stay or should they go, starting with the go, because that's more fun. And we'll begin with Jerod Mayo. Now, look, I think Jerod Mayo, there's a real chance he's going to be back next season. Hard to give him a fair shake with this roster, with all the inexperience he had going into the role, but the truth is he's in way over his head as a head coach, and you see it with the body language, you see it with his lack of enthusiasm, especially at these end of the year, end of the season press conferences. Looks like a completely different guy at the podium than we've seen in the past. And look, we knew he was inexperienced going in. He probably got this job a year or two earlier than Robert Kraft wanted him to, but he's the head coach right now, and you don't know how much he's going to improve from year 1 to year 2, just with all that he has to deal with. And with this new Patriots coaching staff that is very collaborative, he's managing a lot of figures there, and that presents its own challenges, which even Bill Belichick didn't have. So, he's in over his head. He probably will be next year too, so that's certainly an argument for him to go. But something that we've seen with Jerod Mayo, which has been a real concern, is just his inconsistent messaging when speaking to the media. He constantly contradicts himself. He'll say one thing in the Sunday postgame and issue a correction Monday when he gets back with the media interviews. He often gives real mid-wit responses when he gets asked questions, and he just basically speaks in these word salads, these corporate word salads that don't actually mean anything. You know that bell curve meme with the IQ chart, which shows the people with the lowest IQ giving a short, concise answer, the people with the highest IQ giving the same short, concise answer, and then the majority of people giving long word salad answers. Those are the midwits, and that's what Jerod Mayo does in these press conferences, in these interviews. He did it a ton in his podcast with Tom Curran earlier last week, and he says things like, at the same time, in saying that, you'll ask him a question, he'll say, or they'll ask him are you going to play the young guys like Javon Baker or Caden Wallace? Is Jalen Polk going to get more reps? And he'll say something like, yeah, we definitely want to see these young guys and what we have, but at the same time, in saying that, we want to reward the other guys on the roster. He doesn't actually give you a clear answer. He just gives you the argument both ways, and then you just feel lost not knowing what he's going to do because he isn't very decisive out there. And we need, give Bill Belichick credit. Yeah, I know he was grumpy, he was a curmudgeon at the podium, but he just gave you the answer right away. Even if it wasn't the answer you were looking for, you at least kind of got a clear answer from him. Whereas Jerod Mayo, you're just getting these long, corporate, lengthy word salads that really show you haven't thought this out as much as you probably should have, or else you would have responded in 5 words instead of 150, and then we just lost 10 minutes of our lives. Another thing with Jerod Mayo, defensive head coach, and the defense is getting worse. What does Jerod Mayo actually do? We know that he's delegated pretty much all of the offense to the leadership of Alex Van Pelt at offensive coordinator and Ben McAdoo, who's been an assistant. I don't think Jerod Mayo actually is doing all that much on the offensive side of the football, which means he's probably putting his focus in there on defense, and the defense has been regressing all season long. And that's a concern. If your defensive head coach can't even patch up the defense and your offense actually ends up being the strength and somebody else is running that whole thing, that's a good argument to not be back at your job. Also, like I said, this team has the potential of going 3-14. That would be one last victory from last year. You would have hoped at least this team would be the same or better in Jerod Mayo's rookie season as head coach. That is not the case. And last but finally not least, Patriots could have the opportunity to replace him with Ben Johnson, an offensive mastermind, or a guy like Mike Vrabel, who, in my opinion, is a top 10 NFL head coach. Really weird situation with him there at Tennessee. I don't think he deserved to be fired. Surprised the Patriots weren't able to do real interviews. They just handed the job to Jerod Mayo because they wrote it into his contract. Would have loved to see Mike Vrabel able to make a pitch. You know he would want to coach for a team like the Patriots, where he is a Patriots Hall of Famer, has that red jacket. You can improve the head coaching spot. And these types of guys, Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, they do not grow on trees. You wait another year with Jerod Mayo, he fails yet again. You may not be able to replace him with someone as good as Ben Johnson, who has the capability of being the next Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan head coach, or Mike Vrabel, who you know will probably do a good job and at least keep that locker room buttoned up. Now, why should Jerod Mayo be back? Yes, we had a lot of fun with the reasons he should be fired, but why should he be back? Well, he's young. He's probably going to learn very quickly just because of his inexperience. He's going to learn at a faster rate than anybody else. And Jerod Mayo has said this multiple times that he expects himself to make the biggest leap from year 1 to year 2. Now, from a PR standpoint, that is a stupid thing to say because you're just basically saying, I assume I'm going to be back here. That probably raises Robert Kraft's rabbit ears a little bit, saying like, hey, this is not a sure thing. You got to stop being in interviews and saying, I'm going to make the biggest leap from year 1 to year 2. Let's see what you can still do here in year 1 and stop making excuses. That said, he's probably right. If you're going to grow, you're probably going to grow the most from year 1 to year 2. And Jerod Mayo probably deserves another chance for that reason. Not to mention, I think Robert Kraft is very inclined to be patient with Jerod Mayo because he's been patient before with his rookie head coaches who've all worked out pretty well. Bill Parcells got off to a rough start, although they finished the season well. That remains to be seen for the Patriots. Bill Belichick got off to a rough start. We know what he did. And even Pete Carroll had some okay teams after having a rough start his rookie season as the Patriots head coach. Robert Kraft stuck with those guys. Jerod Mayo has significantly less experience than those guys, so he expects him to probably take a leap from year 1 to year 2. Also, Jerod Mayo was handed one of the worst rosters in the league, not to mention the slate of injuries he's had to deal with, particularly on the defensive side of the football. Losing Christian Barmore for the majority of the season, losing Jawan Bentley for the entire season. There's been injuries in other areas too. Certainly on the offensive side of the football, Chuks Okorafor, huge bust, was supposed to be a bridge left tackle. Tons of injuries on the offensive line. And he was dealing with one of the worst rosters in the league. I think Bill Belichick may have made this a 6 or 7 win team had he returned. We're looking at the long term here. I'm not sure Bill Belichick deserved to come back. I understood all the reasons for firing him, even if he would have done a better job this season than Jerod Mayo did. This is a bad roster, which was set up by Bill Belichick. Elliott Wolf could only do so much. I know there's lots of criticism about him, but ultimately, you can't turn this roster around in one season. Jerod Mayo hasn't done a lot, but he also hasn't been able to maximize it. But last but not least, I don't think this would be a good look for Robert Kraft and the Patriots. Suddenly, they look like a real dysfunctional New York Jets, Carolina Panthers style organization, bringing in a rookie head coach and firing him after the first season, who's only 37, 38 years old. Not a fair shake if you fire him after 1 year. I certainly can be swayed the other way, and I gave my arguments there, but in all likelihood, I think Jerod Mayo will be coming back and probably deserves to be coming back. But I think if you got a shot at Ben Johnson or even Mike Vrabel, it's worth at least considering. Now to the offensive coordinator role with Alex Van Pelt. Why should he go? All right, well, first off, the offensive creativity leads a lot to be desired. Sorry, I cannot speak today, but his offensive creativity, I think it's okay in the early game scripts that he draws up during the week. But when we get into the third and fourth quarter, when he has to pull from his tool bag of tricks, there just isn't a lot there. And there's a lot of predictable play calling, especially on first down. A lot of cautious play calling. Patriots had the chance to really expand their lead last week against Indianapolis, and instead they ran the ball a couple times, set up a 3rd and long, didn't chew up much time on the clock, ultimately set up the Indianapolis Colts for their game-winning drive. There isn't a lot of creativity there when he gets away from the script. The Patriots, like I said, also had the chance to bring in a highly skilled offensive play caller. If Robert Kraft really is willing to move on from Jerod Mayo and Ben Johnson is interested and they hire him as the head coach, he's going to be the play caller in addition to the head coach, and that would ultimately maximize Drake May's potential. Also, the offensive line has been abysmal. The offensive coordinator deserves some of the blame for that. Yeah, perhaps the offensive line coach more, but, a lot of that blame has to fall on Alex Van Pelt. I know he doesn't have a lot to work with, but it is by far the worst offensive line in football compared to the rest of the league, at least according to Pro Football Focus. And finally, he has a lot of inexperience as a play caller. Yeah, he's been an offensive coordinator before, but he wasn't the play caller in those roles. He wasn't the play caller in Cleveland. This is his first year being a real full season offensive play caller, and we see it show out there. And maybe you want someone in there who's younger, more creative, or perhaps has more experience, which Alex Van Pelt does not have. But why should he stay? Well, same reason. He has a lot of inexperience as a play caller. You expect him to make a big leap from year 1 to year 2. Not to mention, he's proven, and he did this in Cleveland with all the injured quarterbacks where they ultimately settled with Joe Flacco last year. He's proven that he can adapt multiple schemes with different quarterbacks, different offenses out there. I know he loves the West Coast stuff, but he's willing to go with the power run and work with the talent that he has on the field. This year's offense was set up for Jacoby Brissett. He has an entire offseason now to plan ahead and build a great creative offense for Drake May, and probably deserves another season just because he's done a good job with Drake May. He's been brilliant with Drake May's development, especially with all that Drake May has to deal with. We were worried about putting him out there because you don't want to break the guy in the same way they broke Mac Jones, but even with the worst offensive line in all of the NFL, it has worked out with Drake May and the development by Alex Van Pelt and T.C. McCartney, the quarterback's coach. They've done a good job, and you have to chalk that up as a success for the way Drake May is playing, and I think that is perhaps the number one reason Alex Van Pelt deserves to come back. Also, it wouldn't be a good look to fire him. Patriots would be moving on to their 5th offensive play caller in 5 seasons if they were to fire Alex Van Pelt. Again, I think if you can bring in a Ben Johnson and you're willing to move on from Jerod Mayo, probably worth doing if that involves firing Alex Van Pelt or even keeping him as offensive coordinator and just taking away the play calling duties. For the most part, it wouldn't be a good look to have a 5th play caller in 5 seasons unless you can get someone really good. And really, the offense, in terms of the coaching staff, doesn't need a lot of turnover. I think they need a new offensive line coach. They need a new receivers coach. But everybody else can stay, and you can make a strong argument that all of those guys should stay. And of the 3 coaches that I'm talking about here, I think Alex Van Pelt, with the way the offense is improving, with Drake May's development, perhaps deserves to stay more than the other 2. And lastly, let's get to DeMarcus Covington, the defensive coordinator. Why should he go? Well, number one reason, the defense has regressed significantly under his leadership. I know the run defense has been better of late, but they've stacked way too many 160-plus yard performances against opposing teams on the ground. In some of these games where they were around 100 or just below, they could have had a lot more had those teams chosen to run the football a little bit more. Even the secondary, which is the strength of this defense, has regressed quite a bit these last few weeks. They patched up the run defense, but the DBs, the linebackers, hasn't looked very good. And, DeMarcus Covington was an inside linebackers coach for a few years here, and they haven't shown anything. Same argument about Jerod Mayo. These are defensive guys, and they're going backwards. And even veterans like Kyle Duggar, he's been playing poorly, perhaps his worst season as a member of the New England Patriots. He looks lost out there, constantly in the wrong position. He was responsible for the first 3 touchdowns that the Miami Dolphins scored a couple of weeks ago. All of those were Kyle Duggar's fault. That comes down to the coaching. And yeah, I know you don't have a Devin McCourty back there to kind of keep them in check, but defensive coaches have to be able to patch those things up, and it hasn't worked with DeMarcus Covington. So same thing, as I said with Jerod Mayo. They don't have a lot of experience there in these leadership roles as head coach, as defensive coordinator. A lot of the coaches on the defensive side don't have a ton of experience. They have an opportunity here to bring in a real veteran defensive play caller, and that's my biggest issue with this coaching staff is outside of Van Pelt and McAdoo, these are all guys who are in new roles for the first time that are surrounding Jerod Mayo. I've mentioned, what's Wade Phillips doing? I know he's coaching this team on my shirt right now, but you can bring in a guy like Wade Phillips and he'll do a lot. They missed out on a real opportunity to bring in a guy like Brian Flores last year as defensive coordinator. I don't think you're going to be able to get him again. He might be looking for a head coaching job himself, but he's done a pretty good job as DC in Minnesota. You could have brought him in, and I think this defense would have looked a lot better, and we may be talking about a 6-7 win Patriots team had they done that instead of bringing in a rookie defensive play caller. That was a big leap DeMarcus Covington took, but when all's said and done, I think Jerod Mayo is going to be back because Robert Kraft believes in him, and it's going to look bad if they fire him after one season. Alex Van Pelt is going to be back because the offense is getting better and because of the development of Jerod Mayo. And DeMarcus Covington will ultimately be the fall guy, and he will not be back. Or he'll take a demotion if he's willing to stay with the Patriots. But I think DeMarcus Covington will be the fall guy. Now, the reasons why DeMarcus Covington perhaps should stay, I've listed them out here. I can't think of any. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, but there really aren't many. And he perhaps deserves to be the fall guy, even though I think Jerod Mayo ultimately should take full accountability. But look, DeMarcus Covington, he's a smart young coach. Like these other guys, probably could make a significant leap from year one to year two. But I think he does not have a lot of pros relative to the cons, relative to Alex Van Pelt and even Jerod Mayo. So if I had to predict right now what I think will happen, it will be DeMarcus Covington, who's coaching somewhere else next season, and Mayo will get another chance, and Alex Van Pelt will certainly be back. But let me know if you disagree in the comments below. What would you do with Jerod Mayo, Alex Van Pelt, and DeMarcus Covington? What would you like to see the coaching staff look like heading into the 2025 NFL season? Curious to hear from you. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'll be back Sunday night from Arizona going to the game, so that'll be the next podcast. We'll see you then.
Guys cast in the spotlight.